Hi, this is Matt with AppliancePartsPros.com. Today we'll be showing you how to repair your appliance. Remember, anytime you work on an appliance, make sure it's unplugged or the circuit breakers are off so there's no chance of electrocution. Also make sure you turn off your hot and cold water supplies. In this video we're going to show you how to change out the Frigidaire washer rear outer tub assembly. It's going to be a very easy repair and should only take a few minutes to show you how to do it. If you already have one of these, great. If not, you can click on the link below or get it at AppliancePartsPros.com. When you open up the package, you're going to get the new rear outer tub assembly, which includes the gasket that goes in between the two halves, the water seal, and the two bearings that are pressed into the tub. The rear outer tub assembly contains the seal and the bearings. The main reason to be changing it out is if the seal went bad, causing the bearings to go bad, which would cause your inner tub to bounce around, and you'd have water coming out of the back of the tub. In order to change the part, we have to pull the machine out from the wall so we can take it apart. First thing we're going to do is go on the back side and disconnect the water lines. Now that we're at the back of the machine, we're going to remove the fill hoses, hot and cold. They're labeled on the back, so make sure you don't mix them up when you put them back on. We're going to use the pliers and break them free and take them off. You want to make sure you put a towel down because you will get some water that comes out of them and you don't want it to get all over the floor. With the hoses out of the way, we can take the top off the machine. If you have a control panel like this, we're going to have to open it up and disconnect some wire harnesses in there. And then we can take these 4 screws out so we can take the top off. If you don't have one of these, you don't have to worry about it. In order to get in here, we're going to use our Phillips screwdriver and remove these 6 screws. Now that we have all the screws out, we can set the panel aside. To disconnect these wire harnesses, all you have to do is press the releases on each side and pull them apart. Once you have them apart, you can take the ends that go into the machine and push them down inside. Now we can use the Phillips screwdriver to take out the 4 screws that hold the top onto the washer. Now that we have the screws out, we can push the panel forward about a ½ inch so we can walk around to the side and lift it off the machine. Now that we have the top out of the way, we can use the same Phillips screwdriver and remove all the screws that hold the back panel on. Now that we have all the screws out, we can lift the panel off and set it aside. Now we're back on the front of the machine. We're going to remove the access panel on the bottom. It's held in by 2 screws. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver again to take them out. Now that we have the screw out, we can pull the bottom of the front panel out a little bit and pull it down off the mounting pegs and set it aside. Now we can reach in and loosen up the clamp that holds this hose to the tub. You want to make sure you have a towel ready. Probably going to get some water that comes out. We're going to loosen it up with our Phillips screwdriver again. Once you have it loose, you can reach in and pull the hose off the tub. Now that we have the hose off, we can open up the door so we can remove the door boot. There's 2 styles of these. The older ones were glued on, so you have to pull it off and then clean off all the residue. And when we put it back together, you'll have to glue it back on. Most of the newer ones are held in by a clamp that have a spring down at 6 o'clock. We're going to use a small flathead screwdriver so you don't damage the seal. Be very careful and get underneath here and pull the spring out so we can pull the clamp off. Once you have the clamp off, you can set it aside. With the clamp out of the way, we can pull the outer lip of the door boot off and go all the way around and kind of stick it into the drum. Once we have it off most of the way, we have to reach in here and take this clamp off. To get the clamp off, we're going to reach in and grab it with the pliers and twist it to release it so we can pull the boot off the water nozzle. Once you have it off, you can pull the clamp out. And then we can slide the boot off the nozzle. Now that we're on the back, we're going to remove everything that we have to take off so we can pull the tub out. First thing that's going to go is the belt. All you have to do is pull on it and turn it, and it'll come off. And then to get the motor out, we're going to first cut this little zip tie off so we can take the wire harness out. Now that we have that zip tie taken off, we can reach in and disconnect the wire harness from the motor. There's a locking tab on each side of the harness plug. All you have to do is squeeze them together and pull the plug off the motor. Now we're going to remove the two 5/16 screws that hold the motor in. We're going to use a nut driver to take them out. To get the back one off, we're going to use a 5/16 socket with a long extension. All you have to do is reach in there and take it out. Now that you have all three screws out, we can take the motor out. The motor's a little bit heavy, so you want to be careful when you're taking it out. It should be in there pretty loose once you have the screws up, so all you have to do is get underneath it and push towards the front of the machine and pull it out. Now we're going to take out this control board down here, just in case we drop the tub on it when we take it out. We don't want to break it and have to buy a new one. All you have to do to take it out is remove the two wire harnesses. All you have to do is release the locking tabs and pull them off. The lower wiring harness has a locking tab on the top and the bottom, just like this. All you have to do is reach in and squeeze them together and pull the harness off. Once you have them off, you can get the wiring harnesses out of the way. And then we can take out the two screws that hold it in. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver to do that. Once you have the screws out, all you have to do is lift it out and set it aside. Now that we have the control board out of the way, we're going to reach in with a small flathead screwdriver, and right in this hole right here there should be a little spring clip that holds the air dome hose onto the tub. Ours is actually broken off, so we can't show you, but all you have to do is press on that little spring tension thing, it's plastic, and push forward so the air dome hose is released and is not attached to the tub anymore. Now we're going to take off this weight that's located at the top of the tub in the back. We're going to use a 7/16" socket to reach down and loosen up these nuts. You don't have to take them all the way off, but you do have to loosen them up so we can pull the weight out. Once you have them loose, you can reach in and pull the weight off the tub. Alright, now we're going to remove the shocks. There's one on each side. They're both taken out the same way. We're going to take a 12mm wrench and get it over the back of the pin in order to compress the locking tab. Once you have it on there, we can take a big pliers and reach in and pull this locking pin out. Now that we have the pin out of the way, we can kind of compress that shock down and swing it out of the way. The one on the other side is done the exact same way. Now that we have everything disconnected from the bottom of the machine, we can take this hose off on the top, and then we can take the springs out. To get the hose out, all you have to do is reach in here and grab it and very carefully pull it out of the housing. And we're going to leave it attached to the tub. Now we can take these brackets off. There's one on each side that hold the spring in case it bounces around, the spring doesn't fall off the frame. We're going to use our Phillips screwdriver and take out the screws. Once we have the bracket out, we're just going to put one of these screws back in to hold the bracket in place, just in case so it doesn't move around. Then we can reach underneath and lift up on the tub and take this spring off. And very carefully set it down on the bottom of the machine. It's still pretty heavy. You don't want to slam it down onto the pump down there. And then once you have all the weight released, you can unhook the spring from the tub and pull it out. I'm just going to hang it right back here where it was so we don't lose it. Now that we're on the other side, we're going to take this one off the same way. Now we can take the spring off on this side. It's pretty heavy since all the weight of the tub is on it. So I'm going to lift up on it and have somebody else take the spring out. Once you have the spring out, you can very carefully set it down and hook the spring back in the frame just like the other side. To take this thing out is going to be pretty heavy, so if you need to, get somebody to help you just like you did to get the spring out. All you have to do is very carefully pull it out so we can work on it. Now that we have the tub assembly out of the washer, we put it up on some blocks to get it off the floor. If you have yours set on the floor, make sure you put something down to protect it. We're going to use a 9/16 inch socket to take off the pulley. Maybe a little bit tight, so you might have to give it a good crank to break it free. Once you have the bolt out, we can lift the pulley off the axle. You may have to tap it a little bit to get it to break free and get the inner drum to drop down a little bit. Once you do, all you have to do is lift the pulley off. Now that we have the pulley off the tub, we turn it over again so we have access to these 3/8 inch screws. We're going to go ahead and use our ratchet and remove them all so we can break the tub in half. Now that we have all those big screws out, we can break the tub in half. You may have to take a flathead screwdriver and go around the edges and make sure it's broken free so you can lift it off with no problems. And of course, this is a big heavy cement weight, so you want to be careful when you lift it off. But all you should have to do is lift it up and set it aside. Here's the gasket. It's located in this groove. If you're breaking the tub in half for any reason, such as the gasket being bad, or if you're changing the inner tub, you should get a gasket and replace it either way. If you're replacing the back half of the tub because the bearings and seals have gone bad, you actually get a new one with the rear half of the tub, so you don't need to order one extra. Whether you're changing the outer tub with the bearings or the inner tub with the spider and shaft, the two may be stuck together, and what you'll have to do is hit it with some penetrating oil, let it sit overnight, and see if it'll break free. If the penetrating oil doesn't work, you can try to heat this area up with a heat gun. You just want to be careful to clean all the grease off of it so you don't start a fire. You want to make sure when you're heating up the area that you don't overheat the tub and cause it to warp or damage the bearings. If you're not replacing the bearings, you don't want to damage them or the tub. Hopefully you won't have to do all that to your shaft to get it to come out. But once you get it loose, you're going to have to hit it with a hammer in order to drive it out. So if you have a metal hammer, you want to use a piece of wood over this. We have this plastic hammer which won't damage the shaft, so we're just going to use that and tap it out. Once it drops out, you can lift the rear of the tub off. Now that we have the inner tub out of the outer tub, if you're going to reuse this assembly, if it's not damaged or cracked, we're going to take a wire brush and clean up this mess as much as we can. The main thing you want to look at is this surface right here is where the water seal goes, so you want to make sure that's not damaged. Once you make sure the shaft is okay and you clean up this section, then we're going to put a little bit of grease right around this brass part, so when the water seal sinks down onto it, it'll get a good seal. Once you have these spider arms clean and you're sure there's no cracks in them and you are going to reuse this inner tub, you can carefully run a little bit of grease around this area right here, the brass part. This is where the water seal goes, and you want to put just a little bit of grease on here so when you lower the rear of the tub on, it gets a good seal. Here's the old rear outer tub assembly next to the new one. If you already have one of these, great. If not, you can get it at appliancepartspros.com. We do have to change over these bolts so we can put the weight onto the new one. So we're just going to take off the washers and the spacers and swap them over to the other side. You don't have to tighten it all the way down, just tighten it down finger tight so it doesn't rattle around until we're ready to put the weight in there. Now that we have those brackets swapped over to the new part, we can put it into the washer. We can set the new rear half of the tub onto the shaft. You want to set it down very slowly. And once you have it set down so the shaft and the bearing are flush, then we can put the pulley back on to hold it in place. To put the pulley on, all you have to do is line it up with the shaft and push it down into place. Once you have it down, we can put the bolt and the washers back in. And we're going to use our wrench with a 9/16 socket to tighten it down. Once you have it tightened down good, we can turn the tub over so we can put the rest of it together. Before we put the front of the tub back on, you want to make sure you clean this lip off really good to make sure there's no residue or anything on there from the old one. So when you put it back on, you get a good seal. Once you do that, you can lift it up. Get somebody to help you if you need to. You still have the weights on this side, so you have to lift it up and set it down very carefully. Now we can go around and put all the screws back in. First we're going to set them down into the hole, and then we'll go around and tighten them down. Alright, now we're going to use our 3/8" socket and go around and tighten them all down. Now that we have the complete tub assembly put back together, you want to get somebody to help you lift it back into the machine. You have to very carefully lift it in there and set it down so you don't damage the drain pump or any of the hoses, just like when we took it out. Once you have it in most of the way, we can get somebody to help and put the springs back on. We're going to put this side on first, so we're going to unhook it from the frame and hook it through the hole in the tubs. And then we're going to have somebody lift the tub while we guide the spring back into its position. Now we can do the spring on the other side. We're going to unhook it from the frame and hook it through the tub, and then get somebody to help us while we lift it up and put it back into place. Now we can take our Phillips screwdriver and remove the screw that we put back in to help hold the bracket down. And then we're going to put the safety bracket in. You want to make sure that the kink goes right above the spring. Once you have this one done, we can do the one on the other side. Now that we have the brackets reinstalled, we can reconnect the hose to the soap dispenser. To put the hose in, all you have to do is press it into the housing. So this groove right here is all the way in, and you get a good seal. Maybe a little bit tight, but once you get it pushed in all the way, you should get a good seal. Now we can reinstall the shocks. All you have to do is swing the tub forward and pull the shock over into place and lift it up and slide it into its little spot. Once you have it in there, then you can press the pin in to lock it in place. Now we can do the shock on the other side. It's done the same way. When you push these in, you want to make sure they go all the way through and the locking tab comes out on the other side. Now we're going to reconnect the air dome to the tub right here. Remember, ours is damaged, so we're just going to use a zip tie to put it on. You would just push yours back into place. It's very important to make sure that the air dome and the pressure hose are secure, because if there's a leak or a problem with these, this is what tells the washer when it's full and everything. So you don't want any leaks or anything on this. Once you have it back in place, you should be good. We're going to cut off the excess on the zip tie since you don't have that at home. Now that we have the air dome reattached to the tub, we can put the control board back in. All you have to do is set it down so the tab lines up in the back, and then push it towards the front so the screw holes line up. Then we can use a Phillips screwdriver to put the screws back in. Now that we have the board remounted, we can reconnect it to the electrical connections. All you have to do is push them into the board, make sure they lock into place. Next, we can put the motor back in. We're going to put it back in the same way we took it out. All you have to do is slide it in a little bit past the mounts, and then make sure all four of the legs go into the motor mounts on the motor. And then once you have it lined up, you can pull it forward so it stays in place. Once you have it in place, we can use our 5/16 inch socket to put the screws back in to hold it in place. Once you have the back one in, we're going to use a nut driver to put in the front too. Then we can reconnect the wire connector and zip tie it to the tub. All you have to do is line it up with the motor connection and push it on so it locks in place. Remember, the wire tie is going to go right through this hole and around the wiring harness to hold it in place. Once you have it tightened down, you can cut off the excess. Now we can put the belt back on the pulleys. Remember, you want to make sure that the grooves go against the grooves in the motor pulley. Once you have it on the motor pulley, you want to hold it, and then you can bring one side up, preferably this side on the right. And like a bicycle chain, you want to get it started, and then hold it. And then as you turn the pulley, it'll actually stretch the belt out and get it onto the pulley. Last thing we have to put on the back of the tub is the weight. So we're going to use our 7/16 inch socket and loosen up these nuts so we can slide the weight in there. Once you have them loose, we're going to carefully line the weight up and push it back into place. Once you have it in there and pressed all the way in, we're going to take the socket and tighten down the nuts so it clamps it into place. Now we can put the hose back onto the bottom of the tub. There's this little cutout notch right here that has to be lined up with this little tab on the side of the tub. So just make sure when you're pushing it up there that it lines up. Once you have it up and in place, we can use our Phillips screwdriver to tighten down the clamp. Now that we have the hose reconnected to the tub, we can put the door boot back on. We can open up the door and reinstall the boot onto the front panel. First thing we have to do is make sure that the tube fitting goes on there. You want to make sure that you get this area right here where the clamp goes all the way up here past this first ridge so we can put the clamp on. All you have to do is feed it up through here and slide it up. Once you have it up there all the way, we can put that clamp back on. And once you have it in position, you can reach in with your pliers and twist the ends back together so they lock in place. All right, now that we have that clamp on, we can put the door boot around the outer panel. All we have to do is go around and feed this particular lip into this groove. And once we have it all the way around, we can put the spring clamp on. All right, once you have it on all the way around, we can put the spring clamp on. The spring clamp goes on with the spring at 6 o'clock. So we're gonna put the left side out over here and then feed it all the way around the groove, making sure it goes in and holds the door boot in place. And once we get over here to about 3 o'clock, we're going to get to where we can't put it in anymore. We're going to use our locking pliers to grab the wire right here. And then we're going to use this to pull the spring so this clamp can go in the rest of the way. You want to keep the clamp really close and pull towards the side of the machine. If you pull out this way, it's just going to pull the whole clamp off. Once you have it in place, you can take the locking pliers off and make sure it went in the groove the whole way around. If you had the type of door boot that was glued onto the front panel, you're not going to put the clamp on. You're going to get some glue and glue it on so you get a good seal, and let it sit for as long as the glue takes to cure. Once you have it on there, you can close the door. And then we can put the access panel back on. All you have to do is line up the pins in the holes and lift it up into place. Once you have it in place, you can use your Phillips screwdriver to put the screws back in. Next, we can put the back panel on. All you have to do is lift it up into place and line it up. Once you have it in place, we can go around with our Phillips screwdriver and put all the screws in. Next, we can put the top back on the washer. To put the top back on, we're going to line it up and set it down so the little cutouts on the front go underneath the front locking bars. And then before we set it completely down, we're going to reach inside and push these two wire harnesses back up into the control panel. Once you have the wire harnesses through, you can set the top down and then pull it back so we can line up the screw holes. Once you have it lined up, we can use our Phillips screwdriver and put in these 4 screws. Now that we have the top on, we can reconnect these wire harnesses. All you have to do is find the wiring harnesses that match together and plug them back in so they lock together. Now that we have the wiring harnesses reconnected, we can put on this back panel. There was 2 screws that have kind of a coarser thread, look more like wood screws. These are the screws that go into the plastic console on each end, so we're going to put those on first. Now we can put in the rest of the screws. Now that we have the machine put together, the last thing we have to do is reconnect the fill hoses. Make sure you put the cold on the cold and the hot on the hot. Once you have them on there finger tight, we're going to take our pliers and tighten them down so they don't leak. Now that you have everything reassembled, you can plug it back in, turn the water back on, and take it for a spin. Thanks for joining us for another successful repair brought to you by AppliancePartsPros.com. Check out our other repair videos on our site, Facebook, and YouTube.